Unprecedented, uncertain, unbelievable. The words hardly seem to do justice to what Michigan has seen this year. The ongoing battle against COVID-19, civil unrest in our cities, destructive flooding. Tonight, your questions are at the forefront as congressional leaders from across Michigan come together to address the issues that matter to you. This is the State of Michigan, a virtual town hall with congressional leaders, live from the studios of Wood TV in Grand Rapids and WLNS TV in Lansing.
Good evening. Thank you for joining us for this special television and online event. I'm political reporter Rick Albin, live from the Wood TV8 studios in Grand Rapids.
And I'm Sherry Jones, news anchor at WLNS TV6 in Lansing. We know that Michigan, like so many other places around the country, is facing hardships like we've never seen before. We're battling a once-in-a-lifetime pandemic, the deadly coronavirus. It's claimed the lives of thousands of Michiganders. Our state has also been the scene of violent rioting from Grand Rapids to Lansing to Detroit and communities in between. Protests escalating in the wake of the death of a black man at the hands of police and a 500-year flood event. Entire communities left submerged after catastrophic failures at dams in mid-Michigan. Tonight, the focus is on moving forward.
Over the next hour, we'll be joined by a wide array of women and men who represent us in Washington, D.C. Congressional leaders from literally all over the state, standing by, answering your questions, everything from the federal government's coronavirus response to flood recovery and bringing our nation together to heal division. This broadcast is being watched in every television market in the state on Wood TV8 in Grand Rapids, WLNS in Lansing, WJMN in Marquette, WJRT in Flint, and Fox 32 in Cadillac. And we're streaming live on clickondetroit.com.
Our first group of lawmakers features a freshman lawmaker, 2 congressmen from West Michigan, including the state's longest current-serving member in the U.S. House, a lawmaker whose district is dealing with historic flooding and a mainstay in Metro Detroit politics. Alissa Slatkin represents Michigan's 8th Congressional District, which includes most of the city of Lansing, plus parts of Clinton, Ingham, and Oakland counties. The Democratic Congresswoman won her seat in 2018, becoming the first Democrat to represent the district since 2001. Republican Congressman Fred Upton represents Southwest Michigan in the 6th Congressional District and has since the 1980s. Upton serves in leadership roles in several committees in Washington. Also in West Michigan, Republican Congressman Bill Huizenga from Michigan's 2nd Congressional District that includes the shoreline communities along Lake Michigan. He's been a member of the U.S. House since 2010. Debbie Dingell represents Michigan's 12th Congressional District in Metro Detroit, which includes Ann Arbor and Dearborn. She succeeded her late husband, John Dingell, the longest-serving member of Congress in U.S. history. Before politics, Dingell spent more than 30 years at General Motors. And another member of the GOP, John Molenaar, represents Michigan's 4th Congressional District, including parts of northern and central Michigan. It also includes the city of Midland, his hometown, an area devastated by historic flooding late last month. When we planned this town hall weeks ago, the United States and Michigan were much different places. Over the last week, we've seen our cities in turmoil, a response to the death of a black man killed in police custody.
That's where we begin tonight. We have a lot to get to, not a lot of time for it, so we ask all the members to make your points as briefly as you can. Our first question comes in from Haslett, watching on WLNS. And the question is, what specific strategies on the federal level do you propose to prevent further police brutality? How quickly can Congress work on drafting bills that incorporate said strategies? We'll start with Congresswoman Slatkin. Congresswoman, what are your thoughts on what Congress could do in the wake of all of this unrest?
Sure. So a number of us were just having this conversation in a bipartisan way as part of the Problem Solvers Caucus, a bipartisan caucus of Democrats and Republicans. And listen, I don't think anyone could watch that video of what happened to George Floyd and not feel just exhausted and furious with what happened. And it's really just a moment where we have to face some of these long-term inequalities that we know have been there for a long time. We talked about it in a legislative way by looking at what we can do at the national level on reform, particularly for the police officers. We had members of the Congressional Black Caucus come and brief us with ideas related to, looking at some of the policemen who stood by and maybe either participated or watched. What are the responsibilities that the police officers have when they are bad apples, when there are people that aren't obeying the spirit or the letter of the law? So there's a bunch of pieces of legislation that are being worked on now. And my hope certainly is that we can do this in a bipartisan way. I think the country wants that and they need that right now.
Let's move to Congressman Upton. The city of Kalamazoo, the scene of unrest this week and also the scene of some peaceful protests. Your thoughts on what's happening in your home district?
Well, we have to realize that there really is injustice here that needs to be dealt with the right way. I too am a member of the Problem Solvers Caucus, a bipartisan group of 50 members. And we met on a Zoom call literally in the last hour. We talked about a lot of different options. For me, I've reached out to a good number, and me and my staff have reached out to a good number of the community leaders. I joined a peaceful protest in Benton Harbor earlier this week, but we have to also denounce the violence because that sets us back. Nobody really wants to see us go back. We need to go forward. We have to recognize that we have immense problems that we have to deal with, and that's why I'm convinced that the Problem Solvers Caucus and an agenda that we're going to be working on literally the rest of the week and when Congress comes back into session can deal with some of these things to make sure that in fact there is accountability, that we can look at new standards, and we can look at the inherent problems that have caused this issue to rise to the front burner.
Thank you for that. Let's check in now with Congresswoman Dingell. What is your take, especially in the Metro Detroit area?
Dr. Martin Luther King taught us that riots are the language of the unheard. It is still a reality in this country. The nuns taught this to me at a very young age, that I was lucky. I was a child of privilege, that yes, we were all created equally, but we're not all treated equally. What we have witnessed in the last couple of weeks is just a reminder of what young Black men, quite frankly, in particular, but if you are African American in this country, the reality of being treated differently. I think we're at a crossroads. I think we all have to work together because, to quote President Kennedy, if not us, who? If not now, when? And I think this is a time when we must address it. We've had, unfortunately, some issues in Washtenaw County in the last 10 days, too, and community is coming together to demand accountability, but to work together. I spoke at a rally in Ann Arbor on Monday, and our police chief, our sheriff, and leaders of the community walked together, including our football coach on Tuesday.
Congressman Molenaar, quickly, if we can move on to Congressman Molenaar and your thoughts, please.
Sure. Well, first, I want to commend those who protested peacefully because there was an injustice for George Floyd, and our hearts go out to his family. There clearly is a problem with racial bias, and it's something that we need to have better training in our law enforcement. I think we also need to put together the bipartisan coalition that passed criminal justice reform and work together to address this problem as well. On the other hand, those who were looting, those who were destructive of property, there should be no tolerance for that. That doesn't help bring justice to the nation. That only brings further discord. And we need to work together to promote racial reconciliation in this country. And I think it begins with our leaders in Congress, and we need to work together. And I think that coalition that passed criminal justice reform is exactly what we need to do to move forward.
And Congressman Huizenga, you've seen what's unfolded in West Michigan. Your reaction to this tonight?
Yeah, I like everyone else, was absolutely repulsed by what had happened to George Floyd, and that is not acceptable. And I can tell you, I've not met a single person or talked to a single person who believes that was acceptable, including police officers. Every single police officer I've talked to or even heard on the media. What I think we need to talk about, though, is what are some of those practical sides. And to me, one of those things is transparency. And it could be as simple as making sure that body cams are available and maybe in some cases mandatory. Making sure that there is adequate training, making sure that there's additional training. Pete Stauber, who is a congressman from Minnesota, some might recognize his name. He actually played for the Red Wings for a while, then spent 25 years in law enforcement. And I was on a call with him earlier today, as was Fred Upton. And he was talking about the state taking charge of some additional training that could go into that. And I think those are some practical things that we also need to talk about in addition to this larger community discussion on healing.
Thank you, everyone. We'll try to keep these answers quick as we'll be really tight on time. Nearly 3 months since the state of Michigan announced the first case of coronavirus. Nearly 6,000 people in our state have died. Devastated families, taking an extreme toll on our economy.
And it's also taken a toll on our state budget, leaving hundreds of millions of dollars in school funding in jeopardy. Kelly in Clarkston wants to know the likelihood that the federal government will provide financial assistance to public education. So, Congresswoman Slatkin, can you speak to that and the federal response to coronavirus overall?
Sure. So, Congress has voted on 4 big appropriation bills since COVID started. And we know, because we've been hearing from our mayors and our state officials in particular, that one of the big things we need to do is cover down on the lost revenues due to COVID-19. We know that in order to pay the base operating budget for teachers, police, fire, first responders, public health officials, people who are literally on the front lines of this crisis, we need to help the state with some basic covering of our lost revenues. A couple of us voted on that a couple of weeks ago in the hopes that we would start that conversation. I still hope that we continue that conversation with the Senate. I consider myself a fiscally responsible person. The federal government can't pay for everything, but we have to be able to have that conversation. We can't start laying off teachers who have been in the front lines of trying to teach our kids. So it's something that we voted on, some of us, and something hopefully we will take up as a combined bicameral measure.
Congressman Upton, what more might Washington do in response?
Well, just a couple things, and I'm going to go back to our Problem Solvers Caucus discussion that we've had over the last couple of weeks. Remember, this is a bipartisan coalition, 50 members. We meet on Zoom calls now rather than in person, literally for a couple hours every week, including just in the last hour. But we're pursuing legislation. We're working very closely with the Teachers Association, the National Governors Association, National Association of Counties, the League of Cities, the Republicans and Democrats, House members and Senate members. And we're forming around a coalition called the SMART Act, which will provide $500 billion. It'll be done by the numbers, not by politics, but it'll be based on population in a state, based on the number of COVID cases, and based on the loss of revenue in this calendar year. So it's not going to fix things like the Illinois pension system and things like that. By the numbers, you'll have a formula then that'll go to each state with the flexibility of using it, in fact, for public education, but making sure that those dollars actually go not only to the state budget, but also to the cities and to the counties based on that same, what I'll call, fair formula. We're coalescing behind it. We're hoping that the Senate, and we've got some real leaders over there, again, on a bipartisan basis, that are pushing hard for it. I'm encouraged that we will see this come about before the end of the month. It'll have real legs. We're also, by the way, remember, we have divided government, so you've got to have a president that will sign it. So some good discussions with the White House as well. And at the end of the day, the end of the process, I think that we'll have this in place. And in fact, it will, in a positive way, impact our public education.
Thank you for that. Congresswoman Dingell, what do you believe is the next step?
You know, I want to remind people that COVID is still very real here in our communities. My own family, I've lost a family member. I've lost many friends that are no longer here, and its potential to spike again is very real. are taking care. Our public health response is at a very local level. It is the EMTs, the fire, the police, and our teachers that have been on the front lines with the nurses and the doctors and the bus drivers. And they have been a very critical part of our civil structure. We need to make sure that they are getting help that they need. We need to begin to rebuild the economy, but our state and local governments need help. I supported the HEROES bill. I supported it in honor of the heroes that have been addressing this problem. And as we go forward, we need to remember that COVID is still there. We need to practice important public health measures. And we also need to, as we reopen the economy, work together as communities.
Thank you. Representative Molenaar, is more help likely?
I believe it is, and I think, already that's being, obviously the House passed legislation. I did not support that legislation because I felt it was important to evaluate the $3 trillion that we've already spent and make sure that's spent wisely before we spend more. But I think there will be additional funding for states and local governments. It's important to note that a lot of the funding that we've passed hasn't even reached the states yet or has not reached the local communities. And to me, that needs to be an important next step that we see happening. I think the most important thing we can do is reopen the economy in a safe manner, making sure that employees, people are safe, but at the same time, people want to go back to work. Our economy cannot sustain further shutdown. And so I think it's important that we all work together to do that in a safe way. I'm pleased that the governor reopened northern Michigan. I know for tourism and a lot of these communities, this summer time is vital for those communities. And I think we need to do it in a safe way, but make sure that we're getting back to our strong economy that really is the engine for the school aid fund.
Congressman Huizenga, can you quickly give us your take on what the federal response should be going forward?
Yeah, well, actually, John Molenaar kind of referenced it, and this is a copy of the letter that myself and my Republican colleagues sent to the governor a week ago, requesting information about what they are doing with the $3.8 billion that has been sent to the state. About $3.1 billion of that has not been distributed at all. The governor is refusing to distribute that to our local and counties and local governments, and there is no explanation as to why. I've talked to a number of our legislators in the state house and the state senate here in West Michigan who are on the appropriations committee, and they're saying, well, the governor's talking about flexibility. Well, Treasury has laid out very clear guidelines that this money was intended to use for this year's additional expenses for COVID response, yet that hasn't been done. I, for one, and I'm not speaking for any of my other colleagues, but I, for one, will not give additional dollars or flexibility until the governor actually follows the letter of the law of the CARES Act first. Then, when there is additional money left over, I do believe there will be, then we should be talking about that additional flexibility. But I want that decision-making in Lansing, not in Washington, D.C., as much as possible.
And finally, Congressman Molenaar, I want to come back to you on the topic of another issue the state's dealing with, and that's to talk about the historic flooding your district saw last month. I only have about a minute for you to do this, and I apologize, but we know thousands of people were displaced. What does the future of your hometown look like?
Well, we're pulling together, and it's amazing to see the way people, the resilience, but it has been a historic disaster, as you mentioned. 2 dams being breached, 1 completely destroyed, and tremendous devastation from the flooding. I appreciate my colleagues and people from all over the country who have supported this emergency declaration that the president signed. We really need to move now to a disaster declaration so that FEMA can be fully engaged, helping people as we navigate through this crisis. But you're right, it was one event that was, just unheard of, but I'm very grateful for the way people are pulling together and helping their neighbors.
Absolutely. All right. Thank you all so much for taking time to participate in tonight's town hall.
Our next group of lawmakers represent districts that stretch from the southernmost parts of the state to West Michigan, Mid-Michigan, Detroit, and the UP. Congressman Dan Kildee was elected to represent the Flint area in Washington back in 2012. The Democrat has been a vocal advocate in Congress on several issues, including the Flint water crisis. Republican Tim Walberg represents part of the south and south central part of the state, including Branch, Eaton, and Hillsdale and other counties. He serves on the Committee on Education and the Workforce and the Committee on Energy and Commerce. Representative Brenda Lawrence is from Southfield and serves the 14th Congressional District. That covers most of the eastern part of Detroit, including downtown, and stretches west to take in portions of Oakland County, including her hometown. GOP Representative Jack Bergman represents Michigan's geographically largest district. The retired Marine Corps Lieutenant General represents the entire Upper Peninsula and 16 counties of northern Michigan. And a lawmaker who has made headlines over the past few years, first elected as a Republican, now serving as an independent, Justin Amash, who recently considered a run for president as a Libertarian. He represents the 3rd Congressional District, which is Calhoun, Berry, Ionia, and Kent counties.
Thank you all for joining us tonight. Now, we want to begin with something that we all could use a little more of, and that's unity.
We get our question tonight from Kristen. She's from the Houghton area in the Upper Peninsula, watching on WJMN. Again, keep your responses brief because we want to hear from all of you tonight. Here's the
What, if anything, can be done from the federal level on down to the individual level to get past the bickering and knee-jerk disagreements so we can come out the other end of this pandemic a little more unified?
So it's not just the pandemic. With all the unrest around the country in the wake of the death of George Floyd, we all need to be coming together. Congressman Kildee, we will begin with you. What are you doing to work across the aisle through all of this?
I think it is notable that since the coronavirus pandemic hit us, Congress actually has been able to work in a bipartisan. We passed 4 bipartisan bills. In the history of the country, people would have been shocked to see that, but we did it. We came together. That does not mean that we don't have differences. But I think what we've seen when our backs are against the wall is that the muscle memory, 6-month memory of our democracy is still pretty good. We've been able to work together, those of us in Michigan particularly, to work across the aisle and make sure that whether it is direct support for people who are unemployed or help for small businesses or healthcare needs that are going unmet, or I think the very important issue of supporting state and local government, we actually have been able to come together. My hope is that we can translate some of the unity of this crisis to some of the other big long-term questions that this country faces, such as the issue of racism that we've seen. So we can get some of the long
Congressman Bergman, speaking specifically about the death of George Floyd and the response that we have seen around the state, what can Congress do? What should you be doing in response to that?
Well, thanks for letting me comment on that tonight, because number one, we all of us, Democrat, Republican, young and old, black, white, you name it, stand with the family of George Floyd. There is no room for bad actors in our country, whether they be bad cops, bad individuals, bad, period. We are a country that was founded by people who had a very, very, very deep faith. And I ask people every day, what's the opposite of love? Most people will say hate. I would suggest to you it is fear. What we fear could, if we allow it, devolve into hate. My colleagues and I work every day in D.C., face-to-face, now more virtually face-to-face. But it's about love of our country. It's about standing for who we are and standing for others who can't stand for themselves. We need leadership, especially at all levels, but especially in the state and local communities and law enforcement. You've seen it every day. I mean, you saw it with the sheriff of Genesee County yesterday. We had protests and peaceful protests in 1st District today, Houghton and Alpena, where the police marched with the protesters. We are about love. We are about faith. That's how we founded this country. That's how we move forward.
Right. Let's see what he wants to do.
Thank you for that. Now, Congresswoman Lawrence, how do you believe that we should all come together?
We either try to connect.
You know, this country that we are so proud to be citizens of, the United States of America, is not identified by ethnicity, by any group of sameness. We are Americans based on embracing ideas, beliefs, and values. And one of the things that this country was founded on is the belief that all men and women are created equal, and that we have rights and freedoms. And so this is the place where my frustration kicks in. When we forget about whether you have a R or D on your back or on your shoulder, and look at, are the values aligned, are our policies aligned with who we are as Americans? And when we do that, we move forward. The example of the HEROES Act, the example of the CARES Act. These are things that we are addressing who we are as Americans, our beliefs and our values. So often, and really now in this environment, we are leaning toward that's a Republican policy or that's a Democratic policy. This country's Constitution is not a Republican or Democrat Constitution. It was one that was fought out by two bodies. And if I have one major criticism, in the Senate, the leadership refused to even bring a bill to the floor. For the Senate to vote it up or vote it down or even debate it and change it to policies that they feel are reflective of who we are as Americans. And when we can get to that point where we are not voting because we're Republican or because we are Democrat, but does that bill contain what is best for this country? That's how we move forward. And this death of this man by a human being in a uniform has brought this country to the point that, do we really value life? Do we really believe that all people, regardless of the color of their skin, should be treated with justice and be treated equally and fairly? And so many people are waking up. And to me, I'm praying, because this has been 400 years in the making, that we have finally come to a point where white people, as well as Black people, understand that this is a country where we value lives regardless of the color of our skin.
Congressman Amash, in the wake of all of this and what we've seen happen, is there anything Congress can do to help address some of those systemic problems?
Well, first, what happened to George Floyd was absolutely horrific, and it's an experience faced by millions of people every year. There are millions of people, particularly in our Black and brown communities, who fear for their lives when police officers come. So they're worried that if someone calls the police on something that's a minor infraction, they might actually sustain serious injury or death or be dragged away in handcuffs. So we have to address the real concerns facing people and understand how people view this relationship with police officers. You know, it depends on where you're from, whether you think the police are doing great work every day or whether you think that there are a lot of troubles. And we need to recognize that and try to work together as a community. As far as Congress is concerned, I've introduced legislation in this week where we're going to introduce it on qualified immunity. And this is a doctrine that says that police officers who commit violations of constitutional law, where they violate someone's civil rights, they are largely immune from liability. It's very hard for someone to press for civil action against these officers, and we need to change that. We need to make sure that police officers are liable, just like you and I would be liable if we harmed someone. And I think it's really important that we work together in a bipartisan manner to pass this legislation. It would be one of the most important changes we could make in the law to ensure that all people are treated equally under the law.
Congressman Walberg, what can you do at the federal level to create some understanding?
I think one of the things, and I appreciate the comments of my colleagues, But one of the things we need to hop on right now is the fact that I think if it isn't 100%, it's close to 100% of Americans right now believe that George Floyd was murdered, and that a police officer and 3 officers looking on perpetrated that crime. There isn't a disagreement. And in a time where we see a lot of disagreements and separation and disunity in our country, this is an opportunity to jump on it. As I watched the first time that horrific video last week, probably many people don't know, my colleagues know, that I'm a member of Congress that has an African son-in-law, a daughter and son-in-law that I performed the wedding ceremony for. And as I watched the face of George Floyd, I pictured my son-in-law there. It was a horrific sight. And I think there's a time right now that America can come together, and we can look at some of the issues relative to ferreting out the bad actors amongst our police officers, which are very few. But this group of 4 sullied everybody. We talked today about the idea of looking at how we can bring the federal government, not to meddle with the states and the locals, but when a police officer like the officer who murdered George Floyd had 12 insurrections against him already, why was he still continuing on? Maybe it's time at that point where the records after 2 of those type of things would come up, that the Justice Department would take a look at what's happening here and take it from the local community or even the state and say, we have to find out why this officer's going bad. Those are things that we ought to be looking at. But again, using this time in our history where we generally agree that something horrific was done, let's turn what that happened into and the demonstrations that are taking place, not the riots, but the demonstrations under First Amendment, and make something happen together.
Members, you have all been very eloquent in answering your questions. I'm going to ask you to be brief in this next round. We have about a minute apiece. Renee and Holt would like to know why some believe that the federal government needs to provide money to help states recover financially from the coronavirus. She goes on to say she thinks it's a state issue. What about it, Congressman Kildee? Should the federal government help states balance their budget?
Yes, they should. And I think most members of Congress agree with that. States did not choose to have COVID-19. Michigan did not choose to be one of the hot spots. And because we have a dependency on sales tax and income tax, along with gasoline tax, we are getting hit really hard. We should be really clear about this. If there is not the will in Congress to support state and local governments to fill those deficits, that will mean police officers, firefighters, basic first responders, essential elements of civil society will be diminished. School teachers will be laid off. No one chose this. The governor is in the most difficult position of all. The state legislature can't appropriate money that's not there. This is a national crisis, requires a national response. And just like the federal government is stepping in to help people who are unemployed, large businesses that are failing, small businesses that need a bridge until this crisis is over, local governments need the same thing, and the state government does as well. This is essential. It's a crisis that nobody here asked for, and we do need to act to help keep those essential public services, those basic elements of civil society funded.
Congressman Bergman, please weigh in on this as well.
Well, I'm going to have a slightly different perspective than my colleague. On the 27th of May, I led a letter to the governor from Michigan Republicans urging the state to share the coronavirus relief fund resources with the local governments, such as hazard pay for first responders. Right now, Michigan has access to over $3 billion with a B dollars in coronavirus relief funds. Our job at the federal government is to provide resources necessary to ensure that the citizens who are out of work because of the coronavirus, businesses can open up when the state opens up. That's our primary role. And this is not a bailout. This is a hand up.
I think we lost part of that signal, but we'll move on. Congresswoman Lawrence, is more money on the way to the state, do you think?
Yes. I'm a former mayor. I realize clearly the challenges that cities and townships all over this country have experienced. So just talk about the city of Detroit. Almost a third of its tax revenue came from the casinos. They were shut down. Think about the revenue that is generated by the economy and small businesses. Everything was shut down. So unlike the federal government, cities and states and counties must balance their budget. And if they don't balance their budget, when we're having this debate about where the money went, which we should, I agree 100%. We should have accountability for any federal dollars that we allocate to our states. But if we don't, then the final decision of cutting back on schooling and education, cutting back on roads and infrastructure, cutting back on fire and police will be a reality in all our communities. So while we have that oversight over where the money is going, we must ensure that we as the federal government, because if you think this corona shutdown has had an impact on our economy, just think about across the country and your major economic centers in this country will be unable to provide the essential services that they are required to do because they will be balancing their budgets, and it will create havoc even more than the level we see with a shutdown.
Congressman Amash, is money for state budgets something that you would support?
Well, these are undoubtedly difficult times, but it's precisely because state and local governments have to balance their budgets that we should leave decisions to state and local governments, that they should be making these kinds of fiscal decisions in consultation with the community, so that citizens are making the decision for what is spent and what is not spent. And when it comes to the federal government's role, I've said many times throughout this ordeal, throughout this pandemic, that the only people not getting bailed out are ordinary Americans. Regular people are not getting bailed out. We're bailing out big corporations, and now there are people who want to bail out states and other governments, and the people aren't getting the benefits that they need, and that's a real shame. That from the very beginning, what should have happened is money should have gone directly to the people, not through a convoluted system of funneling it through here and there and making people jump through hoops to get support. We should give money directly to the people, and that's what I continue to believe. Don't bail anyone out, big corporations, governments. Help the people directly.
Congressman Walberg, as quickly as you can you explain if you think Michigan should be getting more money?
I sat in a hearing yesterday in Washington. 6 of us Republicans showed up in town, and I think one of the necessities is to get us back. The Senate is meeting, we ought to be meeting, and then we can talk about these issues. And I think we can find out that there are solutions, but they aren't as simple as just saying, let's bail out a state. We've spent $3 trillion already relative to COVID. And the federal government gave guidance initially that caused governors to do what they did. Since that time, governors have done very different things. The 3 governors in front of us, including our own governor, had done it all differently. Asa Hutchinson from Arkansas never shut down the state. Jared Polis has opened up Colorado much more rapidly. Ours is slow in coming. And so as I said to our governor, of the $3.2 trillion that you still have to spend, basically, that has not been spent, that we sent you already, I want to see how that works first. And then we'll look at what is a necessity as a result of what we require to do as a result of COVID. Beyond that, I don't think my taxpayers nor the taxpayers in Ohio, Indiana, other states are willing to simply bail out states and local communities for things that they've done with their budgets over the years.
Congressman, thank you very much. Thank you all for being with us.
Our final segment features Michigan's two senators, Democrats Debbie Stabenow and Gary Peters. Stabenow is Michigan's senior senator, serving in the Senate since 2000, when she became Michigan's first female U.S. senator. She serves as the chair of the Senate Democratic Policy Committee and has been a supporter of legalizing marijuana, food assistance, and affordable health care. Gary Peters has served in the Senate since 2015. The Democrat served in the U.S. Navy Reserve and has been a strong supporter of our nation's veterans. He currently serves as ranking member of the Senate Homeland Security and Governmental Affairs Committee. He also serves on the Senate Armed Services Committee. Both have been strong advocates for protecting the Great Lakes and providing clean water for our state. We want to begin with what's happening around the U.S. We have some anger and frustration in the wake of the death of George Floyd. So our first question for you, senators, is from Amanda in Grand Rapids. And she wants to know, what resources will you use to determine the best way to eradicate systemic racism in our country? And Senator Peters, we will begin with you.
Well, thank you. And it is an incredibly important question, particularly after the horrific incident and the murder of George Floyd. Certainly all of our hearts go out to the family, and we understand that unfortunately this is not something that happens occasionally. It happens time and time again all across our country, and we have to deal with the systemic issues underlying racism and the criminal justice system that has not performed in a way that is equitable. That in this country, everybody, no matter who you are, no matter where you live, should be treated equally under the law. There are a number of things we need to do, although one particular effort that I've been engaged in is to create a national commission on criminal justice. Actually, this was something that was done 50 years ago during a very difficult time in our history in the 1960s, and a need to take a comprehensive look at the criminal justice system. Over 200 recommendations came out of that commission. Most all of them were adopted. We made major changes. Some of them were fairly straightforward, like when you dial 911 on your phone. That actually came out from the Criminal Justice Commission 50 years ago. Well, a lot has happened in 50 years, and we still have a long ways to go, and we need to revisit that. In fact, after the horrible events in Ferguson and President Obama's report that came out, their top recommendation was to have this kind of broad commission that'll do a complete look. And the bill that I've introduced, and we actually passed it in the Senate in the last session, and we'll hopefully pass it again and send it over to the House, has broad bipartisan support. My bill has 20 co-sponsors, roughly half Republicans, half Democrats. I've got the support of every major group associated with the criminal justice issue. That means all of the major civil rights groups, the NAACP, the Urban League, National Action Network, as well as all the major law enforcement groups representing police officers and prosecutors. It's important to get everybody around the table and put together a comprehensive plan to deal with all of the aspects of the criminal justice system. It's complex. We have to deal with it in a comprehensive way, and we have to have the political will to get it done. And the way to do that is to do it in a bipartisan way and get everybody together from across the ideological spectrum. We've done it before in this country. We did it 50 years ago. It wasn't perfect, but it moved us in the right direction. We need to do it again, and now is the time to make it happen.
Senator Stabenow, in the wake of the death of George Floyd and the reaction that we've seen around the nation and right here in our state, what can you do from a federal level to try to heal some of that pain and try to end some of the systemic racism?
Well, Rick, it's great to be with you, to both you and Sherry, and I appreciate this discussion this evening. You know, it is horrible what happened, and I think all of us watching that video were stunned. I know I felt that I wished I could go right into the video and push the officer off of George Floyd's neck, and it was stunning to see that there was not an action to do that. And I'm very glad that there are charges being brought this evening. Certainly, these kinds of things have gone on. They're too often and too long. And I understand the pain that people feel and the anger and the fear that people fear, and this has got to change. I do believe we're at a point now where there's an opportunity to do that. I think federally for us, even though decisions are made locally by local prosecutors and mayors and states and so on, we do provide federal funding, and it's very important that we make sure that we are tying that to more accountability, transparency, training. We are working as a Democratic caucus. I hope this will be bipartisan. Senator Cory Booker and Kamala Harris are leading us on a package of bills that would address those things. Let me also say that I released a report from the policy committee that I chair in the Senate on what's happening on the larger question of racial disparities. I mean, under COVID-19, racial disparities are on full display right now. And what happens with the lack of health care that creates a situation where, while we have 14% of our citizens in Michigan being African American, they comprise 40% of the deaths. When we look at housing and food disparities and job disparities, and we look at the fact that the majority of us can stay home and work from home because they're essential workers going in every day and keeping the economy going, keeping us safe, working in hospitals and nursing homes and so on. And disproportionately, these are people of color who may not find themselves being paid enough to even take care of their own family. And what happens when the school closes and you're an essential worker and you have to go to work anyway? And what do you do with your own childcare needs? So there are a whole range of things, education, healthcare, economy, that have to be addressed. But immediately, we have to focus on what needs to happen in law enforcement, police reforms, and criminal justice reforms as a part of that.
Our next question is focused on the coronavirus and the toll it's taken on the American economy. People have been out of work for months, and Denise from Otisville, watching on WJRT, has a very simple question. She wants to know when, and I will include if, people will receive a second stimulus payment. Senator Peters?
Well, I think we have to see how things continue to unfold. Right now, I think one of the priorities that we're looking at is to make sure that those folks who find themselves unemployed can continue to put a roof over their head and put food on the table. There's currently unemployment assistance that is available, and part of this, the CARES Act and the pandemic response, which is something that I worked a great deal on, was to make sure that folks who could normally get unemployment insurance could qualify for it. Folks who are small business owners, people who are part of the gig economy, are independent contractors, folks who drive Ubers, for example. These are people who were impacted in a major way and were facing a dire financial situation. Most families are in a very difficult situation. If you miss a paycheck, and if you miss two, you are in an incredibly serious position. So we wanted to make sure that those folks are taken care of. But also, we have to make sure our small businesses have the resources that they need in order to survive. We will all want this economy to open as quickly as possible and safely as possible. The way to do that is to make sure our small businesses survive. They are the engine of growth. They are the folks that create jobs and allow our local communities to prosper. And if they don't survive, a recovery in this economy will take a whole lot longer. And that's why we put in a paycheck protection program to make sure that employees could stay on the payroll. Those folks who found their company had to shutter their doors, so they could continue to stay on the payroll. That program needed to constantly be refined, and it's an example today in the Senate. We passed legislation along the lines of what was passed in the House in a bipartisan way. It passed unanimously. Democrats, Republicans came together to provide even more flexibility for those small businesses. So as we continue to assess where the economy is, how people are being impacted, small businesses and individual families. So we need to look at making the kinds of investments to make sure that we can get through this. We are facing a double punch here, a public health crisis and an economic crisis at the same time. And we also know that in order to get through the economic crisis, we have to treat the fundamental disease and the virus and the spread of this disease, and other investments we'll be making are related to testing and personal protection equipment. But I can say, at least as far as I'm concerned, to the question that was asked, that if the economy continues to need some stimulus to get back up on its feet, we're going to have to be prepared to do that. Because if the economy stumbles too much and goes into a deep recession, the recovery takes a whole lot longer and the cost is a whole lot longer. We have to be prepared to stand behind the American people to make sure we get through this together and have the financial wherewithal to get up on our feet as quickly as possible.
Thank you, Senator Peters. Senator Stabenow, your response to a second stimulus payment.
Well, I certainly support doing that, but I think there's a lot of other things that we need to do as well. And I want to thank Senator Peters for his leadership on the unemployment expansion for folks that are, single with small business owners, single proprietorships that normally wouldn't be able to get help during this pandemic, and the other folks that have been able to do that. And it's based on his legislation. So I want to thank him for that. But we also have to be thinking longer term about what people are going to need right now, whether it's food assistance. We've got folks coming into the food banks that folks have never seen before. They've never had to ask for help before. And so we need some increases in support under the supplemental nutrition program and some housing help for folks and the stimulus payment that was talked about. And also, I'm really pleased that as we were on the program this evening, that in fact the Senate did pass. Senator Peters and I have been working very hard to get this extension on the small business program, because we've got so many restaurants and folks in tourism and others that haven't been able to use the program because of the way it was originally set up. And so we've been working really hard. And while we were in the middle of the program, we got the word that we originally had some objections on the Republican side, and they lifted those, and we were able to actually get that done. So that's a good thing. But there's a number of things actually that need to happen for folks, because the truth of the matter is that through no fault of anyone's, when folks were told, if you're exposed, you got to stay home for 14 days and you lose a paycheck. And then the schools closed for all the right reasons to protect our children. And then you have to figure that out, right, as well, in terms of taking care of your children. And then your small business closes that you've put your whole life into. And again, we understand all of that. This was about tackling and saving lives, which had to be the top priority. But now as we come out of this, and hopefully in a sensible way, so we're continuing to focus on health and saving lives, it's going to take a while. And the federal government has to be there to have people's backs as we come out of this.
All right, thank you both very much. Our next question is from Gary in Oscoda, and his question is about the rising waters in Michigan. He wants to know what's being done about our infrastructure here in our state in the wake of especially the flooding in mid-Michigan. You have 1 minute each for your answers. Senator Peters, we'll start with you.
Well, we have significant infrastructure needs all across the state that we have to invest in, and certainly we saw what happens when you don't maintain critical infrastructure in Midland with the failure of 2 dams that should have been maintained. It was a tragedy that could have been avoided. We can't let that happen ever again in any community in our state, and have to be making investments that are and build on what our parents and grandparents did. I will mention one particular area that I'm focused focused on is to make sure that we expand high-speed broadband internet. This pandemic has definitely shown that now that we're all on our various apps and communicating online, and as our students are being educated online, unfortunately, a third of the students in our state don't have connectivity. They wouldn't be able to do their homework and do it in ways that are necessary, as well as new technologies like telemedicine, where we can actually provide healthcare services while people are in the comfort of their home and the safety of their home. These are the kinds of investments we need to make as a country to be a world-class economy. We have to make sure that everything is up to the standards that we're going to need to continue to lead the world.
All right, Senator, thank you very much. Senator Stabenow, I'm sorry, we only have a minute, so if you could quickly address the infrastructure needs.
Absolutely, Rick. Well, first of all, the person asking the questions from Oscoda, and certainly PFAS is an issue in water quality and what's happening in the wells. And there's so many different challenges for us on water. We have a water infrastructure bill that is coming before the Senate. We're working to both have some help on PFAS, some help on erosion, as well as what happened in mid-Michigan that relates to the dams and so on, which is a very complicated, horrible situation as well. And then as the co-chair of the bipartisan Great Lakes Task Force, of course, I'm very, very focused on the bigger issues of protecting our Great Lakes.
Senators, both, thank you very much tonight. We appreciate you being here. That is all the time we have tonight. We want to thank everybody in our delegation. We've never had 10 members of the House all come together, both United States senators, to take the question from you, the voters.
That's right. We want to thank our viewers, and from all of us here at WLNS in Lansing and Wood TV in Grand Rapids, as well as WJMN and the Nexstar Broadcasting Network, thank you so much for joining us.
And to our partner stations, Local 32 in Cadillac, WJRT in Flint, and Click on Detroit. A big thank you for being part of this and making it all statewide. A special thanks to you, Sherry, for our first joint venture as sister stations doing this. I hope this is the first of many and look forward to doing it again. Technology is interesting in the time of coronavirus, but thanks to a lot of hard work of the people at your station and ours, we were able to put it together. So thanks to the production crews from both WLNS and Wood TV. And thanks most of all to you, the viewers, for being with us tonight as we continue to keep you covered. Good night, everybody. Stay safe.